Welcome back. In this video, we will go one step closer for our implementation. Just before heading on to the code, let's have a look at what we're going to do it. We ideally have an end user who make a request for the API. The API many a times called as a controller or a resource. The resource is somebody who will take the request from the end user in the form of get, post, put, delete, and many more. Once the request comes to the API, this request is given to a service tier. The service tier is the one who will do all the validation check or handling error codes, handling exceptions, and many more. At the center of abstraction, service tier is one of the important aspects which can communicate with either the end user or with the database. The service tier many a times can also help you to handle custom exceptions, which is also called as controller advice in Spring. The service tier can talk to the database. In our case, we're not going to do this, but on a hypothetical situation, considering the fact if you have a database, then the service tier will talk to the repository, something like MongoDB or MySQL and so on. And finally, we'll have a database who persists it. In trim, there could be a possibility where the service tier can use something like Redis for caching. In our case, we're going to have an end user who tests it with a postman, and we can also have a Swagger documentation generated, which the call is made to the controller. Eventually, the service does the job. We want to simulate the work of database here, keeping few records in memory. In the previous video, we went ahead to create a Spring project, which we stored it in a folder called as SpringBoot initializers. This is a project which we have got. Let's go ahead and extract it. Once when I extract, the project structure here will be very similar to the one which we have seen it in the start.spring.io, which will have a pom.xml file, src folder, which will have main and test, Java and resource, where all your property details will be kept here and the source code will be pretty much kept here. So there will be a default file which gets created and it will have an annotation of Spring Boot application which will kick off your project. Let's get started. We will use Eclipse for our building. Let's go ahead and look at the folder where it is kept. It's in my folder, Spring Starter Project, Spring Boot initializers, sample work. I can select this folder. Let's go ahead and create a workspace. In order to do that, I can create a new folder. Under my workspace, I'll create a folder here, which is called as online tutorial -works. I'll say open. This will launch a new workspace in the specified directory. Now this have 4 sections. On the left hand side, I want to have Project Explorer, which is being shown here, the working section, the outline, and all your property details and console goes here. Let's go ahead and import our project. I click on this, import project. I key in the Maven since our existing project is in Maven format. I'll say next. I'll browse and select the project. Spring Boot initializers, sample work, and say open. If all goes well, there will be a tick specifying the pom.xml file. Let's say finish. It takes a little time if you're doing it for the first time to get all the dependencies from Maven. Alright. So all my dependencies are got. Let's go ahead and have a look at my folder structure. So you got src main Java where all our source code will go here. We're going to create a nice folder structure and I'll have resources. By default, when you load Spring Boot application, this gets loaded on the port number 8080. You have an opportunity to select a different port number. We'll say server dot port, which is 1990. It's absolutely your choice to select one. You can also select an application name For logical representation, I'll say this as customer app. Let's create the package structures. The root package is com.training.sampleword. Ensure that all the packages which we are creating will be nested inside this, or it should be at the same level. To increase the readability, I'll create various packages. The first package which I'm going to create is in the same package structure with controller, which is the place where we're going to keep the endpoint. The next one to have is service. The next one to have the contract for the service. I'll say this as contracts. Many companies use it as interfaces. I'll try having the next one, which is called as model. All good? Let's go ahead and create our first model. The model name which we want to play around with something like customer, which is easy for us to understand. I'll create a class which is called as customer. The customer class will have few fields like private, long, cust ID, private, string, customer name, private, double, cust, sal. I'll go ahead and try creating the parametric constructor so that the initializing becomes easier. I select all the fields which are there and generate. Just to keep compiler happy, and in case if you're using getters and setters, I'll use a default constructor. I also need one more constructor which is not accepting customer ID. So I have a choice. When user pass the data, he can just pass the customer name and salary, and I should have an auto incremented value, which we're going to do it in this course in some time. Further which I'll have the getters and setters. I'll select all, say OK. If you're testing it in your application, a quick toString will help. I'll say generate. This forms a perfect bean for you. Alright, let's go ahead. In my package structure, we have put the model. Let's go ahead and try having the contracts. The contract here is an interface. I call it customer service. I'll have few methods here. Let's name them. To do all our CRUD operations, public customer add customer, which adds the customer to the list. I'll take the type of customer, the variable name called as cust. I'll do an import. You can use Ctrl+Shift+O to import it. In similar fashion, let's have a delete customer, which will return a boolean value, delete customer, which takes long cust ID. To update customer, update customer, which takes customer and returns a customer or the updated customer. Finally, we'll have two more methods to get the customers and get all the customers. To get the customer, it is public customer get customer, which takes a long cust ID. You give me an ID, I'll give you an object of customer. Public list of, which you got to take it from java.util customer get all customers. All good. You have your contract ready. Let's go ahead and start doing the implementation for this. We'll have one more package here, which is called service. Right here. I'll right click, new class. I'll call this as customer service. I'll annotate this class with service, indicating it's a service. And I'll have this class implementing the interface which we have created, which is customer service, which is there in the contracts. Since we don't have a database connected, we want to depict this. In order to do that, I'll have a private variable of static type, just to ensure when we make a multiple operations, it does not void the data. I'll have a map, which is from java.util. The key is a long, the value is customer. I'll have the variable name called as cus is equal to new hash map. All good. I want to initialize few values in the static section so that I can put that in this variable called as cus. Right here. I want to do cus.put a long key. I'll start with 1. The value is new customer. I'll have a long ID, which is 1L, which we have chosen. I'll say Harry. The customer salary 5566. I'll have the same data repeated a couple of times. I'll call this as 2, 3. And I have 2 and 3. The name here is Peter. And I'll have one more name called Naveen. I'll have the salary as 5678 and the last salary as 6655. So this will help you to have a dummy data in your application so that we can test. Since this class has this interface implemented, now it's mandatory for us to override all the methods or to make this class a subtract. I don't want to make this class a subtract. I want to have the implementation. I click on this place, go to source, override or implement methods. I'll check all. By defaultly it gets selected. I'll say OK. All good. You have all the methods right here. Let's go ahead and start implementing it. The first method in the list is add customers. The add customer method will take the customer object. We would say something like cus.put the long key. I want to have a method which will generate the number and give it to me. I'll have a dummy method here which can help me to generate a number. I'll have private long get number of customers. I will increment every time and put it in the add. I want to return cus.values.stream.count. And I just want to do a +1 so that every time you get a new key. The key here happens to be get number of customers. The value is cust, which is the variable which you have got. Just to ensure the cust will have a setter of customer ID, which is get number of customer. This is pretty much simulating it. If you have a database, you will hit to the database and get the data. But as of now, we don't have a database, we are just mocking it. The next method which we have in the list is to delete. The delete method is a pretty straightforward method. I'll return the boolean value. In the map, I just want to remove the value with a key specified as cust ID dot get cust ID if it is not equal to 0. The next method is to update. We will take the customer, a new JSON object, and return that, whatever is updated. In order to do that, I just say cus.put. Do remember, since we are using map, it overrides. I want to put cus.get customer ID and the value happens to be cust. Return customer dot get of customer object which you got ID. All fine. The last two methods in our list is to get a single customer and get all customer. let's go ahead and fill in this. Return from the map, get the customer ID, what we have got. And finally, the last method, which can give you all the customer IDs. I'll return cus.values.stream.collect. So how do I want to collect? We want to collect it with the help of list. Let's do that, which is collectors dot to list. All good. Here we go. We have all the methods which is filled for our service. We got to set this key and value. I'll just copy it and put it here. All good. Yeah, you got to add a return statement. So once this is done, your service layer is all filled. In the next video, we will go ahead and try creating a controller. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next lecture.